to Cody Talks NFL, presented by Blitzalytics.com. And here's your host, Cody Manning.
And welcome into the Monday edition of Cody Talks NFL. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed some of those games yesterday. We had some blowouts, some surprises, and some really great games. I'm going to go ahead and dive into today's episode. No, I guess major news came out where I have any news topics. Outside, let's talk about it. The Spygate video. If you guys haven't seen it, it's on Fox Sports. Jay Glazer got the tape. They're filming exactly on the sideline. I mean, I don't know how you can defend yourself. I understand maybe, this is some stuff you can get from the signals, but at the end of the day, this is what you got caught for, 10 plus years ago, and you're repeating it again. The Patriots lied, said it was an independent contractor. Turns out it was a full-time Kraft employee. So it just continues to look like a bad look for the Patriots. We'll see what the league does to them. But all I got to say is, how can you defend the Patriots as a fan? I see some Patriot fans on Twitter still trying to defend them. I don't understand how you can defend them because, okay, let's just say Bill Belichick and the football side are actually innocent in this. The fact that you just, didn't tell the NFL, didn't tell the Bengals, that's already shady, right? You have a history of getting in trouble for this. And let's talk about this too. You have a history of filming the sideline. How would you not? Now, that guy's a full-time employee, so that's almost inexcusable for him not to know that. But even if he was an independent contractor, how do you not tell somebody, hey, when you go there, make sure you're not filming anything on the Bengals? That's on you. You deserve to be punished for it. Whether you were truly cheating or whether you were not, you deserve to be punished for being that fucking stupid. Sorry about the F-bomb. I had to get that off my chest. I'm going to go ahead and get into this. I'm going to preview tonight's Monday Night Football matchup. And then I'm going to go ahead and recap yesterday and where I stand on those teams. So tonight, the Colts are playing the New Orleans Saints. The Colts, as far as the final injury report heading into this matchup, Kenny Moore has been ruled out for the Colts with an ankle injury. T.Y. Hilton is questionable with a calf injury. He is trending in the right direction. He will be a true game-time decision. They want to test him out right before the game, before they decide to make him active or not. And then Pierre Desir is questionable with his hamstring injury. On the Saints front, they're going to be missing about five guys. Kiko Alonso with a quadricep, Andres Pete with a forearm, Von Bell with a knee, Patrick Robinson with a knee, and then Johnson Bedomosi with a foot injury. As far as this matchup, both teams still have something to play for. The Saints, they got their division wrapped up, but they want to keep on winning so they could potentially have a chance to get a first-round bye, maybe somehow slide into the first seed of the NFC. That's still open after the 49ers dropped the ball yesterday against the Falcons. And then on the Colts side, they still technically not only have a shot to make it to the playoffs, either as a AFC South winner or the wild card, how that would happen. The Colts would need a win out. To win the AFC South, they would need a win out. They would need the Titans to lose to the Saints next week, Texans to lose to the Buccaneers next week, and then they would need the Titans to win that Texans matchup in Week 17. Now, if they want to make it as a wild card, it's more simpler. They just win out these last three games, and then they would just need the Steelers to lose against the Jets, and they would need the Steelers to lose against the Ravens in Week 17. So they have a lot to play for. This is going to be a difficult game. New Orleans is a tough place to play, but they might be catching them at the right time. If anybody listened to my Friday episode, I talked about how the Saints placed two of their top defensive linemen on IR, Sheldon Rankins and Marcus Davenport. Kiko Alonso is out, and then A.J. Klein is actually entering this matchup pretty banged up. So their front sevens, they're not going to be at 100% where they were a couple of weeks ago. So if the Colts can take their strong offensive line and really establish the run and get the ground game going, there is a scenario where they can win this game. I think it's actually going to be a close game because they do have a lot to fight for. But I am going to lean towards the Saints because the Saints are at home. They still, like I said, they want to fight for the first seed. They probably are the slightly more talented team than the Colts. But if the Colts can, like I said, establish the run, if they can maybe force some turnovers in this game, they will have a shot to win this, I believe. I think it is going to come down to the end of the game. Who will have the ball last. But since the Saints are at home, They're rolling more. Actually, I won't say rolling, but they're having a more positive season than the Colts right now. Colts have dropped, the last 4 of the 5 games. So I got to go with the Saints. I don't want to let my biasness play into this, even though I can see a scenario with these injuries to the Saints, how the Colts can pull off this upset on the road tonight. But I'll pick the Saints to win a close one, like a 24-20 type win. And then that'll probably not, that I believe that would knock the Colts out of the playoff picture. But I will take the Saints, but don't be surprised if my Colts get the upset tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. As far as the Thursday night teams from the last Thursday night game of the year, there's no news that came out on the Jets over the weekend, and then something the Ravens are tied into. I just decided to talk about this right here. Terrell Suggs was actually released by the Cardinals on Saturday. Now, he's subject to the waiver wire, so he will find out, I believe, by 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern time today, which team he lands with. But it came out over the weekend that he is trying to angle to land with the Baltimore Ravens because obviously he wants to go to a playoff team. This is probably his last year, then he'll retire. It makes more sense for him to go back to that team that he played with his whole career and try to hop on for that Super Bowl run. But so I guess he's angling where he will probably tell teams he won't report to them if they claim him. Now, it does sound like there might be a team ahead because the Ravens are at the bottom of the list. They got the best record in the NFL. So he literally would have to go through 31 other teams that don't put a claim on him for him to get to the Ravens. Now, the fact that came out over the weekend, I don't know I know he says he won't report, but that still might hurt his chances because if you're a playoff team like, in the AFC, you might want to, hurt the Ravens from getting him. I know there was a report that came out yesterday that the Titans might do that. So that's something to monitor, see which team he lands on. And then I'll go ahead and talk about it too. I didn't think it was going to happen because of what he did to get out of New York, but also apparently Janoris Jenkins, the sources around the league told Adam Schefter they think he will land with a playoff team too. So about 4 or 5 p.m., we'll see if anybody claims him on the waiver wire as well. And then other than that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the Sunday games. I'll start with that Patriots and Bengals game. The Patriots did win 34-13. I'll start with the Patriots since they're the winning team. They are now sitting at a 11-3 record. They have clinched a playoff berth, and they are currently sitting at the number 2 seed. A little news update did come out over the weekend outside the Spygate 2 scenario. They did attempt to do a contract extension with Nick Caserio to be their longtime GM, but they have gone nowhere. Now his contract's up after this year, and he's expected to be a GM candidate elsewhere. And then as far as injuries for the Patriots, Jonathan Jones did suffer a groin injury, and then Shaq Mason did hurt his ankle late in this game. So, yeah, they're sitting at 11-3. They got a great shot to get the number 2 seed. It'll take basically somehow the Ravens dropping these next 2 games for them to get the number 1 seed. Obviously, they got to keep on winning because if they do drop a game and KC wins out, KC will get that number 2 seed from them. So they still do got a lot of play for heading into this weekend. And on the Bengals front, John Miller did sustain a concussion against the Patriots. And then obviously if the Bengals do lose to the Dolphins this upcoming weekend, they'll lock up that number 1 pick and will more than likely be bringing Joe Burrow to Cincinnati. Since the Bengals are sitting at 1-13, I'm sorry, Bengals fans, I really don't have much to talk about. Yeah, you made it interesting in the first half. I thought maybe you were going to pull off the upset, and then you guys kind of completely fell apart in the second half of that game. I'm going to go ahead and get into the next one. The Bucs did face the Lions. A lot of injuries did come out of this matchup. Bucs did win, though, 38-17. They handled business. I'll start with the winning team, as always. Now they're sitting at a 7-7 record, but they've been knocked out of the playoffs. They're just basically playing to finish the season strong and see if they can carry some momentum into the 2020 season. But some injuries for the Bucs. Chris Godwin, he did suffer a hamstring injury. He was actually carted off the field, rolled out quickly. Arians told reporters that it doesn't look good. It came out this morning. The expectation is he won't be back this week. With only 2 games left and you're out a playoff pitcher just like Mike Evans, even though they didn't place Mike Evans on IR yet, I still think those are guys you don't want to necessarily rush back and try to make that injury worse heading into the offseason when you can have a bunch of momentum rolling into the 2020 season. So get those guys healthy. I don't expect to see Godwin nor Mike Evans on the field for Tampa Bay for the rest of the season. Jordan Whitehead and Scotty Miller also were ruled out with hamstring injuries. So brutal blows because Scotty Miller was having a good game, and now they're down another wide receiver with Scotty Miller, and then Jordan Whitehead has been one of the funner safeties in the NFL and on the Bucs I've enjoyed to watch this year. So we'll see if he's able to play this week. Lions, they're sitting at a 3-10-1 record. They just keep on losing games, and they just keep on suffering injuries. Mike Daniels left with an arm injury. J.D. McKessick left with a stinger. Devon Kennard left with a hamstring injury, and Kenny Wiggins left with an arm injury. So there's a team that entered this matchup with all types of injuries across their team, and they just continue to pile it up. I think with all these injuries and with how limited that offense is, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions lose these last 2 games and they finish with a 3-12-1 record, and they're picking, around the top 5. Maybe they're probably for sure locked in top 10. I think they're right now at the top, at the 5th spot in the draft selection for the upcoming NFL draft. Going into the next game with a lot on the line, it was a weird kind of back and forth game. Texas got up, and then the Titans fought back, and the Texans got up, and then the Titans tried to fight back, and it was just too late. Texans won 24-21. No news or injuries came out for either team over this weekend. Texans, they're now sitting at a 9-5 record. They control their destiny to win the AFC South. Kind of like what I was talking about the Colts. I've already hinted at the matchups they have. They got the Buccaneers this weekend in Tampa Bay, and then they host the Titans to finish out the season. So as long as they, I believe, I would have to be corrected on this, but I believe if they beat the Buccaneers this weekend, I want to say that it should give them the AFC South title. I'm not sure if they were to beat the Buccaneers and then lose to the Titans, then the Titans win out and they have the same record. I'm not sure if the strength of schedule and all that, how that would work out. So, but I do want to say if the Texans win this weekend, they probably win the AFC South. I'm sure there will be something that comes out on that over the weekend. And maybe what I'll do is when those playoff scenarios that come out usually on Tuesdays, I'll try to make sure I include that on my Friday episode for you guys. And then with the Titans, though, they're sitting at an 8-6 record. They are still sitting right outside the playoff picture. They got the Saints and the Texans to finish out the season. So they got a tough task to win out the season. I mean, luckily for them, though, the Bills did win yet last night. So that put the Steelers at an 8-6 record. So they still have a shot not only at the AFC South, though, but they will be trying to get it sneaking as that last wild card spot. Since there's only one last wild card spot available in the AFC. I'm going to go ahead and get into the next game then. Denver did travel to KC to face the Chiefs. The Chiefs handled their business. It was one of those snow globe games where it was kind of fun to watch anytime it was on the TV yesterday for me. And then the Chiefs did handle their business, though. They won 23-3. No news came out for the Broncos, and then the Chiefs, Alex Okafor, did end up leaving with a chest injury. Chiefs are now sitting at a 10-4 record. They're just a team that's going to want to win out and try to get into that number 2 seed. They're just hoping that the Patriots either lose to one of those games, either to the Bills this Saturday, or if they want to lose to, or it would be a pretty big upset if it were to happen, but maybe the Dolphins at the end of the year. So I'm sure the Chiefs are really hoping the Bills can pull off this win on Saturday to give them a shot to get that number 2 seed. Broncos are now officially eliminated from the playoff picture. They're sitting at a 5-9 record. They kind of came back down to earth with that young team in Drew Lock, but I don't know. They could still easily finish with a 7-9 record. I could see that happening. Maybe they get to 6-10. Either way, it's officially evaluation time on their roster. See who they want to keep, see who they want to let go, and see what areas they want to address in the offseason. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the next game then. Miami did travel out to New York to face the Giants, and Eli Manning got his last send-off because the way the crowd was reacting, the way the locker room was reacting, it kind of made it feel like that was Eli's not only last game for the New York Giants. I honestly feel like that was the last game of his career. So it was good to see him get a big win. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to watch that locker room speech. It was kind of cool to watch. He gave everybody off until Wednesday, and then Pat Shermer came in and he goes, "I can't overrule Eli." And so I know his fellow players love that. But yeah, Giants won 36-20 against the Dolphins. No injuries came out for the Giants or news. They're sitting at a 3-11 record. And even though they did beat the Dolphins, they still, because of the whole strength of schedule thing, they still hold the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. So they still have they're still in line to potentially get Chase Young. I say potentially because you never know. What if the Bengals, for some reason, decide to go Chase Young at number 1? You never know with those type of things. But they should be in line to pick Chase Young. We'll see if they end, but who knows? They might screw themselves and maybe win another game or two. I believe they even got the Redskins, I think either this week or the last game of the week here. No, they got the Eagles at the last game of the year. They might have the Redskins this week. So they might want to try to drop a couple games, make sure they don't hand Chase Young away to another team. And then the Dolphins, though, they're sitting at 3-11. One news item that did come out for the Dolphins, and this guy deserved it for the year he's had, and he's bounced back after dealing with a bunch of injuries in the beginning of this year, and getting out of Adam Gase. It's kind of funny how some of these players are balling out as soon as they leave Adam Gase, and guys like Le'Veon Bell are having their worst seasons underneath Adam Gase. I don't know if you guys want to put 2 and 2 together, but I am. Devontae Parker, he did finalize a 4-year contract extension worth $40 million this weekend. The deal will include $8 million in signing bonuses and $21.5 million in guaranteed money. So that's a good thing for him. It's also a good thing for Chris Greer to do that type of things. I like it. This is kind of similar to what Chris Ballard is doing with Indianapolis. When you have that much cap money, the guys that are good players that are already there and they're proving themselves as good players to your roster, you reward them, and that just helps push other people on the roster to perform better because you're going to reward the homegrown talent. So that's good for him. He'll be there. He'll be their longtime receiver, either for whoever they potentially pick in this draft, or if they decide to roll with Josh Rosen for the 2020 season. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the next game then. Eagles somehow squeezed this out. They won by 10, but they were down and they had to fight back, and they scored that. They ended up making a 10-point game because of a last-minute defensive touchdown. Eagles did win though, 37-27. No news or injuries for the Eagles. They're sitting at a 7-7 record, and they control their own destiny. They got the Cowboys this weekend. And as long as they win out, they're going to win the NFC East and sneak into the playoffs. We'll see if that happens. They got a big matchup with the Cowboys. Obviously, tune into Friday's episode. I'll preview that and where I think that will go. I don't know. It's hard for me to trust the Eagles to somehow get in the playoffs because they almost dropped the ball against the Redskins yesterday. The Redskins had a chance to win this game. Dwayne Haskins. I can't believe I was dropping his name for a second. Dwayne Haskins looked pretty good yesterday. He's been playing a lot better over the last few weeks. So that's got to be promising for whoever the new head coach would be. Urban Meyer was in the building. I've heard different reports. There's reports that maybe he might be there to potentially be the head coach of the Washington Redskins. But then I've heard things from like Ben Albright where he's supposed to be, I guess, consulting Dan Snyder in his head coaching search. Obviously, he might be there also supporting his former players and Terry McLaurin and Dwayne Haskins as well, too. Who knows? Maybe Urban Meyer might be the head coach of the Redskins next year. Jimmy Moreland, by the way, he did suffer a foot injury against the Eagles. They're just sitting at a 3-11 record, basically destined to pick in the top 5, and we'll see where they go with that. But yeah, they're probably going to finish with a 3-13 record. I really don't. Maybe they might pull off a win here and there, but with only 2 games left, it's kind of hard for me to talk about these bad teams that are already out of it. I'm going to go ahead and get into the next matchup. The Seahawks did win 30-24 against the Panthers. The Seahawks actually controlled this game, and then they kind of let the Panthers have a potential shot to get back within this and make it a 1-score game. But the Seahawks, a couple things happened for them or out of this game. First of all, I'll start with the good news for the Seahawks. They did clinch a playoff berth, so they are officially in the playoffs. And not only did they clinch the playoff berth, but Again, another game I'm going to talk about at the end that I'll bring up. The 49ers dropped the ball against the Falcons. So Seahawks are now the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're sitting at an 11-3 record. I can definitely see them finishing 13-3. Probably going to finish 12-4. They're probably going to finish either 12-4 or 13-3. It's all depending on their last matchup with the Niners at the end of the year. But it'll also depend on these two guys. These two guys are one of the biggest keys on their defense that have been playing well for them this season. Bobby Wagner, he suffered a sprained ankle in this game. So we'll see if that's going to force him to miss any time. And then Quandre Diggs also suffered an ankle injury. So they're going to want to get those guys back and healthy for the playoffs. Obviously, they probably would ideally get those guys back for their Week 17 matchup against the 49ers. That will probably determine the NFC West winner. Panthers, though, there's no news or injuries for them. They're sitting at a 5-9 record. Again, they fired Ron Rivera. There's not much to expect out of this team. It's just full evaluation time between the coaching staff and the roster. But Christian McCaffrey did do Christian McCaffrey things, and he had a great game. It's just sad that now that his team has kind of whittled their season away, he might not get much. He should still get like all pros. I still think he should get like at least offensive player of the year. I'll probably cover that in the episode here in a couple of weeks when I do the end of the season recap. I'm gonna go ahead and get into this next game for you guys though. Chicago did go out to Green Bay and they found a way to lose. Packers did win 21-13. They're sitting at 11-3 record. The Packers have now clinched a playoff berth, so they are officially in the playoffs. Their next Monday, the final Monday night game of the year, next Monday against the Vikings, will determine probably more than likely who wins the NFC North. So all they need to do is win that game. They win the NFC North, and they're currently sitting at the number 2 seed. So that right now they control their destiny to get a first-round bye. And not only a first-round bye, but if the Seahawks or the 49ers drop a game or two, they could potentially slide in at that number 1 seed in the NFC. Tyler Ervin for the Packers, he did also suffer a hand injury. Now, I see the Packers, though. I'll have to talk about it Friday or next Monday. I'll talk about their matchup with the Vikings. But I do think the Packers are going to at least drop one of these last 2 games. I see them finishing with a 12-4 record, like I kind of predicted during the halfway episode I did about a month and a half ago. And then the Bears, though, they're officially out of the playoff picture. They're sitting at 7-7. Disappointing year for the Bears. I know their fans and some people within the media had high expectations for them to not only make the playoffs, but potentially go on a Super Bowl run. And now they're out of the playoffs, so it's evaluation time. See who they want to keep, what areas they want to address, and see where they want to go. See if they want to commit to Mitchell Trubisky. They got a big decision to make this offseason, and whether they want to agree to his 5th-year extension or not. Regardless, more likely, Mitchell Trubisky will be on the roster next year for his 4th year with the Bears, but they might want to bring in maybe some competition to push him, maybe somebody that can compete for the job. We'll see. That's something I will cover when I get into my offseason episodes, when I look at these teams more in depth as far as free agent accusations, where they should go with their roster and all that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get into all the second half games of the day, the afternoon games. I'll start with the Vikings and Chargers. Vikings completely handled their business. They didn't even let this be a trap game. The Vikings won 39-10. Vikings are now sitting at a 10-4 record. It did come with a little injury, though. Dalvin Cook did suffer a shoulder injury yesterday, so we'll see if that's going to force him to miss any time. Obviously, they would definitely want him back for their big matchup against the Packers on Monday night. So that's something to monitor for the Vikings. Vikings are still technically not in the playoffs, even though they got a 2-game lead now over the Rams. They would basically have to drop these next 2 games. They got the Packers and the Bears over the next 2 weeks. They would basically have to drop those 2 games, and the Rams would have to win out for them to lose the wild card position. But obviously, they control their own destiny. They win this weekend. They're going to be in the playoffs regardless. They win this weekend. They put themselves in position to win the NFC North. So yeah, Vikings have a shot to host a playoff game. They should be able to get into playoffs, and I definitely I think they do win out. I think they're going to finish with a 12-4 record, and I do think they're going to be the team that wins the NFC North. But it does depend, though. If they're missing Dalvin Cook, against the Packers, and Alexander Madison is still out, that might hurt their chances against Green Bay next Monday night. Chargers, though, Russell Okung, he did suffer a groin injury in that matchup. Now they're sitting at a 5-9 record. It's just there's not much for me. You guys can tell, not much for me to talk about teams that are out of the playoffs right now with no news. I don't really want to dive into these rosters right now until I do my off-season episodes of Cody Talks NFL for you guys. But yeah, they're sitting at a 5-9 record. It's evaluation time. Maybe they even give Tyrod Taylor the last couple of games to see what maybe they have in him. I'm not saying Rivers yesterday did anything to deserve to get benched, but like I said, they're out of the playoff picture. Maybe it's time to look at different players in different areas of the roster and see what you want to bring back in the 2020 season. I'm going to go ahead and get into this next game. I feel so bad for the Oakland fans in their last matchup. The Jaguars found a way to win against the Raiders. They won 20-16. For the Jaguars, Josh Allen ended up leaving with a shoulder injury. The Jaguars are now sitting at a 5-9 record. I can't believe it. Like at one point, the Raiders were up 16-3, and they let the Jaguars fight their way back to take this lead. I don't know why they threw that ball at the end of the game. The Raiders with Derek Carr, they should have just ran the ball. He was not going to make a completion. I believe he ended up sailing the ball, which gave the Jaguars the ball enough time to go down and get the lead. Gardner Minshew said after the game he's never seen that many middle fingers in his life. And then with the Raiders, there's no news on them. They're finishing 6-8. There is a young team. You know, it's just rookies growing. It's just a lesson for their rookies. They need to learn how to close out games. But again, I put that more on the offensive call to throw the ball when they could have ran the ball and forced them to use their last time out. You know, force more time off the clock. There's ways the Raiders could have won this game at the end of the game, but they didn't. It's a sad day in Oakland. I don't know if you guys seen much of those videos that came out. A bunch of trash was getting thrown on the field. Raiders fans were getting arrested for jumping on the field. So it just was not an ideal game for the Raiders to win that way. And I hope our photographer, Karen Metters, that was at the game, she made it out safely. I mean, I don't think the Raiders fans could have done anything to her, but it seemed like the crowd was very raucous at the end of that game. I'm going to go ahead and move on, though, since both those teams are out of the playoff picture. Like I said, please tune into my off-season episode, guys. I will dive into all these teams that are not in the playoffs once it's after the Super Bowl and start looking into free agency, roster evaluation, all that type of stuff for you guys, okay? I'm going to go ahead and get into this next game, though. Browns did travel to Arizona to face the Cardinals, and the Cardinals beat up on the Browns. It wasn't even close the whole game. Cardinals won 34-24. No news or injuries on the Cardinals front. The Cardinals are now sitting at a 4-9-1 record. There is a young team that's trying to grow under Cliff Kingsbury. This is the type of game they want to get a win at home. They haven't won in like 6-7 games up until this one. So that gives them a win. I guess mathematically the Browns are still alive, but this knocked the Browns out of the playoff picture. They're basically done for the season. What a letdown. But what's weird is this loss maybe came at the worst time, right? There was a bunch of reports from multiple people that I heard that Freddie Kitchens' job was safe, barring an utter collapse. Well, this kind of start towards that utter collapse, losing by 10 to the Cardinals. He was getting him and Jarvis Landry had a heated exchange on the sidelines. But one report is from Ben Albright that reported this. It sounds like John Dorsey wants to keep Kitchens and let him develop as a coach, but it's the owners that are very upset. Obviously, the owners bought into the hype, bought into the expectations with this roster, and they're the ones that want to move on from him after this letdown of a year. I still think if he can win out and he can get to 8-8, he can keep his job. But if they drop these last two games and they finish 6-10, I mean, that's a worse record than what they had last year with less talent. So it's hard for them to make the case. Again, it's hard for me on these things because I'm also a believer where the coach should have 3 years to develop his system, get the roster in shape in his image with the GM. And then by that third year, that's when you should see the growth. That's when you should start seeing wins. Again, I understand why some coaches might be one and done. When it's a guy like Adam Gase getting his second chance and he's completely fallen on his face with it, That's when I can understand a one and done situation, a guy that's on his second or third chance and it's not working out in the first year. Just go ahead and move on. So it's hard for me to say this. I understand too. Like he's been underwhelmed this year. It doesn't seem like he should have got that fast of a move up to the head coaching position. So I mean, I don't know. It's a two-way. It's a flip of the coin for me. But I do believe though, if they do lose these last two games, I could see this report changing, and he could get fired come Black Monday. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the next game. I can't believe this happened. If anybody's been a long time listener of this pod and the fantasy football hot seat, they know my producer Rob loves his Rams, and we both were surprised that the Rams didn't show up to play. The Cowboys completely beat up on the Rams, 44-21. No news came out on either team. The Cowboys are now sitting at 7-7. If they do beat the Eagles this weekend, they win the NFC East and they clinch their playoff berth. It seems like the Cowboys are on that path to somehow sneak back into the playoffs. I was just completely surprised at the dominating effort. If anybody listened to my Friday episode, I said, like, I would not be surprised if the Cowboys win, but I was surprised that they completely manhandled the Rams the way they did. They seemed that they came to play. They looked like the team that they could be, right, with that talent. But will this be the team that we see this week against the Eagles? If it is the team that we see against the Eagles, will this be the team we see in the playoffs? Now, if that's the team we see in the playoffs, they could be a threat. But if it's not the team, if it's a team that we saw the previous 5 weeks, no. So this is such a hard team to figure out where they're going to go. I still think they're going to probably be the one team that sneaks in from the NFC East. They're probably going to finish with a 9-7 record and get into the playoffs. If they're the team to win the NFC East, I kind of hope they win with a 9-7 record, so we don't see a 500 or a below 500 team make it to the playoffs. But I do think the Cowboys are going to eventually win out and get into the playoffs and host a home playoff game. As far as the Rams, though, they're sitting at an 8-6 record. They still, like I talked about earlier when I was talking about the Vikings, they still technically have a shot for the playoffs. They would have to win out. They would have to hope the Vikings lose these last two games. But again, I don't really necessarily see that happening. Even if the Vikings lose to the Packers on Monday night, I think the Vikings can beat the Bears at home in their last game of the year to lock up the playoffs. Rams got the Niners this week, so they got a tough matchup, even though the 49ers are very vulnerable right now with all those injuries to their defense. But yeah, Rams are sitting at an 8-6 record. I think they will probably finish with anywhere between 9 and 7. I can still see them finishing 10-6, though, with a potential chance to make the playoffs. But more likely, they're going to be on the outside looking in, just suffer that Super Bowl hangover after losses. It's very hard for teams to get back for the playoffs after they lose the Super Bowl. It's basically a yearly tradition in the NFL. Sorry, but hey, at least they are going to finish at least 500 or above. That's a win. Most teams that lose the Super Bowl end up having a disastrous season where they don't even sniff the 500 record the following year. I'm going to go ahead and get into that last afternoon game, though. I've basically been talking about all episode without talking about it. The Falcons, they pulled off the upset against the 49ers. They won 29-22. The Falcons, they're sitting at a 5-9 record. Tack McKinley ended up getting hurt in this matchup, and he suffered a shoulder injury. The Falcons, you got to give it to them. They found a way to win. They fought hard in this matchup underneath Dan Quinn. They're sitting at a 5-9 record. This was the type of game that showed if anybody I thought they did have the potential to make it to the playoffs. They have a talented roster. They just showed this is the type of team they could be with that roster. It's just they were a letdown still this year. I'm still don't think Dan Quinn's going to return. I don't know if fighting to a 7-9 record and beating the Niners is going to be enough to save his job. I don't know if that's the right call, even if that does happen, and then you get another letdown year next year just because you thought because he beat the 49ers in December that he shouldn't have the job. I'm not sure where that's going to go. I know it still sounds like he is on his way out of Atlanta. We will see. Who knows? They could win this type of game and then drop the next couple games and still finish with a 5-11 record. But kudos to them. They found a way to win a hard-fought game on the road, and they found a way to take advantage of the banged-up defense of the 49ers. And speaking of the 49ers, They're sitting at 11-3 record. They fell to the 5th seed in the NFC. But even though they did lose, with the Rams losing, that ended up clinching their playoff berth. So the 49ers are officially in the playoffs after this weekend. Obviously, they want to control their fate. They're going to want to win out and try to win the NFC West and get back to the number 1 seed in the NFC. They have a couple of tough matchups. Rams, they could easily lose the Rams. The Rams, I know they were a letdown this week, but with the 49ers banged up defense and it being a divisional opponent, that won't be an easy matchup for them. And then, of course, they got the Seahawks. That is more than likely going to determine who wins the NFC West at the end of the year. So, I don't know. Rams could finish anywhere between the 11-5 record, and they can finish all the way to 13-3. I can see both those scenarios happening. I still think they're going to be a tough team, but they need, Sherman back. They need D Ford back, especially with that injury to DJ Jones that placed him on IR. That showed up in this game. Just all the injuries to the offense showed up in this game, especially when they let the Falcons march down at the end of the game and get that game-sealing touchdown. Now, if D Ford, Quan Williams, and Richard Sherman are out there in that last second drive, maybe that doesn't happen. So I do want, like I said, I do want to give kudos to the Falcons winning this game, but I do lean towards the injuries on that defense had a major impact, and if these injuries do linger into the playoffs, I'm not sure what the 49ers are going to do when it comes to the playoff time if the team is still banged up come in January. Now I'm going to go ahead to last night's Sunday night game. The Bills did find a way to win. It was a pretty good, fun and defense. It was a really great defensive matchup. The Bills won 17-10. With that win, they clinched a playoff berth. It's actually their first 10-win season since 1999. I saw a cool video on Twitter this morning. The team got back in Buffalo at around 2 a.m. And it was like, I think it said that it was like negative, or it was like not negative, but it was like 25 degrees out. Obviously, it's Buffalo, it's cold. And there was so many fans out there waiting for the team that could just cheer them on. I love seeing that type of stuff. But yeah, the Bills won. They're 10-4. They got a huge matchup against the Patriots on Saturday. That's basically going to determine well, here's the Bills scenarios, right? They're either going to finish anywhere between a 12-4 to they'll probably be like an 11-5 record, I think. But let me preview that on Friday if I think they'll beat the Patriots or not. But here's the Bills scenarios. They're locked for sure in the playoffs. If they do win out, and the Patriots not only obviously lose against the Bills this weekend, but they would also need the Patriots to lose against the Dolphins in Week 17. Highly unlikely. But if that does happen, the Bills can still win the AFC East. So say the Bills win this weekend, I think America is going to be the biggest Dolphins fans come Week 17. And, of course, the Bills will have to handle their business against the Jets in Week 17 too. But there is a shot for the Bills to win the AFC East and host a playoff game. But regardless, the future is bright in Buffalo. They found a way to win, and they might not be a team you really want to see come playoff time because they know how to run the ball. They know how to play defense. So they could be a team that can be a team you don't want to face, but also, too, they still got to work on things in that passing game. There's still a lot of kinks in that offense I think they need to work out in these last 2 weeks. And then the Steelers, though, no news on them. They're sitting at 8-6. They're still sitting at the number 6 seed. I can't believe it's going to happen because I literally – said this at the beginning of the year, but they got a matchup against the Jets next week. So yes, Le'Veon Bell does have a shot to potentially hamper their playoff picture, their playoff hopes. It's just something I joked about at the beginning of the season when I looked at the schedule. And then they got the Ravens at the end of the year. So obviously if they win out, they're going to get in as a 6 seed. Obviously if they drop a game, that's going to hurt their chances. So if they give a team like the Titans, maybe the Colts, if they win tonight, a chance to get into the wild card position as well as we get towards the end of the season. So the Steelers kind of control their own destiny as well. They're going to need Doug to play a lot better. One thing I noticed, and this was from Next Gen Stats I saw last night, basically what the Bills did is they took away the whole middle of the field and they forced Duck Hodges to throw to the outside of the field and forced him to throw deep balls to the outside of the field where he struggles, and that's why he threw those 4 interceptions he did last night. So again, once teams get tape on you, it's a lot harder to start winning games. So it's going to be a hard road for the Pittsburgh. to go into the playoffs, but they still have a chance. They're still in the playoff picture at the number 6 seed. They just got to win out and win some games to get in. I'm going to go ahead and get into Rob's question because, reminder, guys, I don't have a Thursday night predictor for you. No more Thursday night games, but we do have 3 Saturday games that I'll preview on the Friday episode. And we got the Sunday games, of course, and then we have our last Monday night game. Can't believe it's that time of the year. This year has flown by. But, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get into this. With Eli's big win, it's got me thinking, Eli and Philip are both at the end of the road. If you were a GM, would you rather have Eli Manning or Philip Rivers for their full careers? Eli's Super Bowl shouldn't weigh in this decision because you're restarting both their careers are either Hall of Famers in your mind. If I had to pick, I'm just a homer, man. I'm going to go with Eli just because he has showed up in big moments and Philip hasn't in the playoffs. I know that's kind of weird to say because Philip has better stats. He doesn't have much of interceptions. I like Philip Rivers too, but again, when it comes down to it, Eli did prove that he could show up in big moments while Philip Rivers hasn't. I know that shouldn't weigh in my decision, but it is for Rob. Sorry. But, I guess it's a toss-up. As far as playing style, but I just don't like what Philip Rivers has done in the playoffs and sometimes. So if I had to pick, I would go Eli. But both are Hall of Famers on my mind. I've already gave my case for Eli. And something I want to give credit to around the NFL is Dan Hansis. Everybody talks about the 500 record, but they don't bring – I guess I've totally realized that's a regular season record. Nobody brings up that does – why? This is not just an Eli thing too. This goes for receivers. This goes for running backs and everything. Why are we not including playoff stats when we talk about teams? Because Eli's record is not 117. It's actually, he's 8-4, I think, in the playoffs. So it's actually 125 and 121. So he actually has an over 500 record in games in his career with 2 Super Bowl wins. So can we stop talking now I'm going on a different tangent. Can we just stop not including playoff stats? And it's the same thing for guys like Larry Fitzgerald. It's how many guys can I go on that they should have more better stats, whether it's wins, whether it's receiving yards, touchdowns. Like, why do we not include playoff stats? That just doesn't make sense to me. That's something I had to get off my chest. And I do think Philip Rivers is a Hall of Famer. I just think Philip Rivers is going to take him time. He won't get in right away. He won't, and I don't necessarily think Eli should get in right away. I think it should take Eli time to get into the Hall of Fame. But longevity, as I talked about with Eli earlier in the year, you can't tell the story of the last 15 years without mentioning Eli Manning. But you can tell the last 15 years without mentioning Philip Rivers. But Rivers has some statistical things that can back up his case and his resume. I just think it will take some time for Rivers to get in. Other than that, guys, I do want to thank you for tuning in. This was a pretty quick episode. Not much to talk about at this point of the year. Like I said, I'm basically just monitoring the playoff teams that are out of the playoffs. I really don't have much to talk on them about unless a news item comes out for my episodes before then. And then other than that, once we get to the offseason, once we get after the Super Bowl, I plan on looking at all these teams, looking at their rosters, teams that they maybe potential cap casualties, who they can maybe target in free agency, look at their cap space, all that type of stuff. I plan on doing this offseason. But yeah, thank you for tuning into this Monday episode. If you like what you heard, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the Blitzalytics YouTube page, please subscribe to it. If you haven't subscribed to our Blitzalytics podcast network, please subscribe to that. We're on all major podcast platforms. The audio version of this is on the podcast platform, as well as like the Blitz Breakdown, the Pick Six, XFL Files, and sadly but surely, we only got 2 episodes left. The Fantasy Football Hot Seat, where it's me and my co-host Rob, and we'll get you guys potentially win your Fantasy Football Championships this week. So tune into that. That'll come out on Wednesday. Other than that, if you guys are looking for any stocking stuffers, please go check out our store. Go to blitzalytics.com, click the store button. Tons of Blitzalytics apparel, but also shop around the store. There's tons of different options that Rob has available for you. He does great work. And if you have anything maybe personal you would want made for somebody, reach out to him. He's at Rob Graphics. He can get something done for you. Also, too, guys, I believe we're still accepting any donations. One last week for the Blitzalytics All Heart Charity League. Go to blitzalytics.com/allheart. 10 different teams represented 10 different charities, all great causes. So if you guys have anything to give, please go check that out and help out some great causes. Other than that, again, thank you for tuning into this episode. Thank you for being here with me all season. We only got 2 more weeks to go of these 2-a-week episodes. I'll see you guys on Friday. Have a great week. Blitz out.
Thank you for watching Cody Talks NFL, presented by Blitzalytics.com. As always, hit that like and subscribe button, and then hit that bell notification icon to stay up to date on all things football.